One of the, or the most important thought leader in social entrepreneurship, I guess we can say, is Bill Drayton, who was the man who coined the concept thought leaders. He has given us a message for the conference. I will only here play a very short message from him regarding what he sees as the important learning for the young generation today. And while we're looking at that this short video, I will invite Rolv-Erik Spilling and Jonas Goshbar into the panel here.
It is almost criminal to allow any child or young person to go into a world that is defined by change. That's what value is, without the ability to contribute. And that's what we're doing right now. So this is completely central, and the work of this gathering is incredibly important because hopefully you will change the future of Norway and help change the future of Europe and the world. So thank you.
So what Bill Drayton says here is that it's almost criminal not to prepare the young generation for the world they're meeting. First, Rolv-Erik Spilling, you represent the user or the employer of those the producers of employment that you were talking about, producers of skills. What is your experience? You heard what McKinsey said here. There is a discrepancy. Could you please tell me? You are from the Telenor. You're head of the what's it called? The
Digital services.
Digital services of Telenor.
Yes.
Which means you're a high-tech user of high-tech skills.
Yes, I guess Telenor is providing services and internet to 11 countries in the world, and in that respect we see that there should be a reason for using the internet, of course, and that brings the services into space. And when we try to deliver relevant services, we see that of course the competence and the people who can do this today is quite different from what it was 5 or 10 years ago. So in that respect, the internet has opened up the vast set of possibilities for very young people in Asia or in Pakistan to high-educated people in Delhi or in Oslo in a new manner. And that I mean, Rebecca mentioned that cooperation also.
Can you tell me, how do you as a firm go about deciding which new products and services you will need to offer? How can you explain the process?
That's difficult.
Yeah.
I think first criteria is that will there be a lot of users using the service itself? And will they, when they have the service, will they use it a lot? And if those two criteria is okay, then it's very relevant. Education is obvious. It's a vast area and it's a very important area, and it's very of course every single person wants to learn new things, and the more easy it is provided to you, the better the usage will be. And I think we see a lot of examples on that.
But when you develop new products and when you meet new markets, you rely on employees that go beyond established skills.
Yeah.
What are you looking for? How do you define? What is the need from the people you want to employ? What do you need from them?
We look more after the creation, the ability to create new things on your own, but also together with other persons or people in teams. And that can be a 12-year-old kid, or it can be a highly experienced developer. But we see that when we are bringing people together and make passion around actually new services, it comes down to what you are able to create together in teams. Not that much necessary what kind of education you have, you can show on your CV in a sense. So it's, creativity is very important.
But do you find, do you have to do a lot to train them into participating effectively in the job, or are they ready-made?
No, of course, it's they are not ready-made at all. But we see that when we are bringing possibilities and putting certain tools in place for them, trying and failing is very, very important in that kind of process of making services. I mean, the whole internet way of doing services is about trying and failing. And that's a new way of building knowledge about what actually you should do. And that is the most important capabilities, I would say.
From my experience from running Montessori schools, I realized one of the major things I do was de-educate teachers to be able to think creatively. Is that something you have to do?
When I meet new employees which believe that they can by themselves change the world, we have some de-education to do. I mean, you have to see that you will always be a part of a team, and actually that is important. You cannot solve a huge problem by yourself, but you have to be relevant, and you will be significant in doing that. But a lot of students, they have been thinking so much for themselves that they forget that capabilities. Maybe this. Yeah.
Thank you. Jonas, you represent the Khan Academy in Norway. I'm sure many of you know what the Khan Academy is, but maybe some don't. So could you please very briefly tell a little about what it is?
Yeah, well, the Khan Academy is a not-for-profit with a very humble beginning. From 2006 to 2010, it was Sal Khan, who is our founder. He made videos and uploaded them to YouTube. Initially, he tutored his cousin, and in 2010, Bill Gates and Google, within a week, gave $3.5 million, and he was able to hire some people to build a platform. That platform has exercises and a dashboard where teachers can connect to the students, and an arena for discussion. And our philosophy is master-based, self-paced learning. So you have to move through a step of exercises, and we assess whether or not the student is ready to move to the next level. So we ensure that every prerequisite is completed with a very high accuracy before a student moves on to a more difficult topic. So we bring the technology to enable the teachers to implement what educators have been trying to do for many years, which is self-paced learning and master-based learning. But it's just been difficult without the technology. And I think Khan Academy is changing that. And obviously everything is free, and we want to translate our resources into 35 languages. Yeah.
So you told me you're a medical student, and you told me that you may not have time to finish your medical students because you're so busy working with the Khan Academy. What made you volunteer as a Khan Academy teacher or producer or translator, rather?
Yeah, I really love the Khan Academy because I feel I've been a part of it from the beginning. As many who is involved, I started out as a user back in 2008. And the only way I could contribute was by donations, so I donated what I had. And eventually, Bill Gates gave his donation, and we were able to build to start a translation project. So it was fairly obvious, being bilingual, that I joined that project, and I'm now responsible for Norwegian. Yeah.
So you have more than 6 million unique users every month.
Yeah.
And it's rapidly growing. What is the value of a large user base in digital learning that Rebecca was talking about? Can you tell us a little about that?
I'm very excited about that, and it's rarely mentioned in the media, but when you have 6 million unique users, you can apply some methods to optimize, in this case, learning, make it more efficient. 6 million users equate to over 1 billion data points, and with 1 billion data points to work with, you can do amazing optimization. For example, when we try to implement some of the pedagogical principles like the spacing effect, where increased intervals will increase retention. So instead of randomly repeating something or repeating everything at once when exam time is approaching, you should repeat something perhaps the very next day, and then the next week, and after a month. And what Khan Academy can do is learn from the users' how they interact with the site and optimize the points at when we hint that they should do a review. So many things like this and examples like these will make the learning experience more efficient. Even a 20% increase in, let's say, earned proficiency, which is very realistic, equates to over 2 or 3 years in school. So that means if we can eventually reach twice the efficiency, that means that every 8th grade students will do university mathematics. So I'm not sure if that is possible. It will be easy in the beginning. You will have high increases in efficiency, and once you reach a certain level, it will be more difficult. So we'll see how far it's possible to take that. But with many data points, I think that is in itself, in addition to accessibility and utilizing resources or making the classroom time more creative and making the learning experience a lot better just by having the resources there. I think eventually optimizing it in itself has huge value, and it's obviously not possible with slow research in the real world. So it's sort of pedagogical research on steroids.
Thank you. Stephen, you showed us this fantastic picture showing the hands as the big part of the brain and the rest the very short part. Is there a danger that with all this technology that we lose sight of this, and how can we avoid that eventually?
Well, it depends on what application we're putting the technology to. One of the great things about Khan Academy is that it truly facilitates developmental education, at least at a certain age. My observation is that technology is quite distracting in the early years, but you know, the kind of employee that you want to hire is somebody who knows how to interact with others, who knows how to work as part of a team. The kind of teachers that we probably want in our schools are those who enjoy working with children and have, you know, bring sort of a developmental ethos to that. If the teacher has to deliver the same lecture this year, this day, that they gave last year, this day, to students who are in competition with each other to see who gets the best grade, that's not going to produce the employees that you want. And Khan Academy sort of frees us from that requirement. The notion of flipping education, so that that lecture, which was going to be the same as it was going to be anyway, so that that can happen at home during homework time, and then school becomes a seminar, you know, a discussion format, children working together, young people working together. Those are the employees that you want to see, I think, those who have been able to have that experience instead of it being just the book, just the test. This also offers opportunities to experiment with different kinds of evaluation. I've been in the evaluation business for 20 years. You may gather that I don't like the evaluation business. It doesn't drive, maybe you gathered that as well. It doesn't drive the kinds of things that you need to hire and that we need to have our society and really have our planet survive. I mean, the people who scored highest on the test are in charge of things right now. Where is that bringing us?
That's a good question. Another challenge that I would like to ask you all about, with the technology, are we able to integrate the learning? We have this tradition in schools from, I guess all traditional education is based on what we need to know as a student at the university, and then it's sort of transferred down to what a 6-year-old can manage to learn, which is absolutely not what a 6-year-old needs to learn and is ready to learn, because there's other things happening in that brain. And then we sort of divide the subjects into very separate subjects, and they don't fit together, and the child doesn't see where they fit together. Is technology helping us integrate these subjects better? What do you think, Tom?
I mean, I think that technology does a number of things. I mean, I think but whether it helps us integrate these subjects together, I'm not sure. I think it certainly helps with self-paced learning. I think it also helps just to broadcast things to people that otherwise wouldn't have access. So I mean, I think Udacity has, you know, the great story where it just started when a Stanford professor put his class online without even asking anybody, and within a week or so had 200,000 people signed up, right? And so technology certainly gives us access. I'm not sure that technology solves this problem of how to integrate the various things people need to learn. I'd love to hear from others if somebody has a good idea for this, though.
What would you say, Rebecca?
I was going to say, I think, in another version of Flip the Classroom, we need to flip the question around. I think one of the very exciting things about technology-enabled learning is that it makes much more possible on a broader scale user-directed learning. So rather than our directing the integration, and I think we do, you know, when we do instructional design, we try and do some of that curating and integrating, but learners themselves will seek out and find the things that are relevant and do that integration when we give them the power to make choices about what they're learning.
Yeah, Salman Khan makes a point of this in his book. I'm not quite sure how we will solve the issue, but once you have self-paced learning, what is relevant or what you learned 6 months ago could be relevant for someone else at the same time. So you don't have this, you don't move on and forget what you did learn at that point in time. So when everyone in the class is at different points and you interact and the peers interact with each other, perhaps it's easier to draw lines between subjects and different topics within that subject, simply because you're exposed to it at different times. I think that's one element. Our website is still divided into subject areas, but you're not working on a topic at a given time specifically. I think that could help.
Of course, there is always, you have to separate it to organize it in a way when you have the specific subjects, but as you say, it might be easier to integrate them yourself.
Well, you know, I really hate to invoke Amazon in this context, or any good shopping site has a feature wherein I click on that beautiful pair of large black shoes, and something comes up that says, you might also be interested in. And those sophisticated algorithms, I think, carry over into the way that people want to learn, right? We're curious about the adjacencies, and I think technology helps us to do that kind of serial exploration into related content and topic matter, learning, as you know, using those metrics to have the site become customized to your learning experience. So over time, the data that it's learned about what you choose to explore can drive the way that information is offered up to the learner going forward, and that's very exciting.
Stephen, you want?
I think it inevitably keeps us in content streams, even if there's an adjacent stream that we found interesting. And I go back to thinking about who you need to hire. You need to hire people who know how to do some pretty, some human interaction skills. Maybe people who have, have been the teacher, have been the student, maybe have taught a colleague in school, for example. So I think that, my sense, and I'm happy to be wrong about this, but my sense is that the kind of things that technology-assisted learning or online learning is best at is practicing the algorithm. What it doesn't give us is that trigonometry actually was invented for a reason. Well, the calculus was invented for a reason, okay? And so, I'm sorry, I'll interrupt you briefly, but, why was trigonometry invented? Do you happen to know why trigonometry was invented?
No, why was it invented?
I'm not sure that I know, but I know that I had to learn
ask a Montessori pupil here.
Well, maybe you know why. Actually, I just don't want to take a hazard at it. But the point is that we have to learn algorithms. Yes, that's quite right. We have to learn algorithms. But I think it's also very interesting and maybe a little bit harder to quantify that. Let's see, trigonometry may have been invented in ancient Egypt as a way of repeating land surveying after the annual flood of the Nile. And so, hey, what do you know? People had this problem where they had to reallocate previously allocated parcels of land, which meant they had to invent surveying. And by the way, a tool of surveying is being able to create like a right angle and all that goes along with that, okay? So now I'm learning about human history. Now I'm thinking, wow, there are people who came before us who had problems that this particular solution solved. Now, we could choose to teach subjects in this rather integrated way. We still need to learn the algorithms, and my sense is, and again, I'm happy to be wrong about this, my sense is that a lot of online learning is a lot like sort of programmed practice one of the great things about Khan Academy is you can watch that lesson over and over and over while you're trying to make the cognitive jump. But I think that lesson looks like it takes place on a blackboard. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I wonder if there's a richer experience that's available that might lead to the kind of things that you need to hire.
Yeah, if I can comment on that. I think Of course, the good with online teaching is that you can monitor everything what you do, and in that sense you can do the analytics and you can propose new way of learning, because you know actually these guys were doing this and it ended up in doing this kind of grade, and then you can get these kind of recommendations through the process. That's very efficient and extremely important, I think. The other thing is that, at least from my perspective, when it comes to employee, they like to discuss problems and to solve problems in a more global way. So if you are looking at a program or you have following a session, at least if you can communicate through some kind of social kind of closed network discussing these kind of session, and you have the common language so that you can do it, that is very, very favorable, and that connects students into the problem solving. And at least that is very important also when you come out into work, of course, because that is the way you operate, at least in global companies.
And in a way, the technology, like the Khan Academy and the technology you talk about, frees up the teacher's time so that the teacher can help integrate the training in a way. So I think it's important to look at it as this way, and not sort of shift the community learning or take it out because there is a technology.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I think it's possible to apply the theoretical knowledge you gain through videos and exercises online as well. What you bring up is definitely true, that you can have a more creative classroom experience once you have the lecture or flip the classroom, like you said. But John Resig at Khan Academy, who is a well-known JavaScript programmer, he has created a unique platform where our students can make a program and see the changes as they happen in a separate window. So that's very real-world-like, where you're actually applying principles that you've learned through Khan Academy, for example, in actually creating your own project. And you can share that project with other students, and students can take the project, build on that, and cooperate that way. And they can even vote on the best project, give feedback. So I think it is possible to do that kind of stuff online.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, because, you know, who's going to learn the best? The person who's going to learn the best and maybe learn the most, even outside the subject area, is those who think about how to create this lesson. I didn't know that was available, and I think that's fantastic.
I think on this point, there's some topics where this can be done fully online, and there's other topics where you need a mix, right? So if I'm learning how to code, I can learn about it online, and I can do it online, and I can get that practice and there's the theory at the same time. But if I'm learning how to, if I'm learning how to build a house, I can only get so much of it online without actually going and getting my hands dirty and doing something about it. And so I think I think it sort of depends on what you're learning. The other thing, though, I wanted to say about this idea of adjacencies with Khan Academy is I think it enables curiosity. So I went on Khan Academy just to check it out about 6 months ago for the first time. I was a latecomer to it in 2008. You put me to shame. But I watched a video about the two fronts of World War II, or World War I, actually. And then I was like, oh, well, this is interesting, but I don't know anything about that Eastern Front. And so then I went on Khan Academy, and I was like, okay, tell me about this part of Russia. And so then I got a video about the geography of Russia there, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I was like, okay, well, tell me now about wars and mountains or something. I don't remember what I searched for next. But you get it because there's just such a vast wealth of information there. It enables you to ask these questions and then learn something about it immediately.
I just want to say, I think that the pedagogy and the technology are evolving very rapidly. We're learning about how we can get as close as we can to a really rich classroom involvement, so we can build in interactivities that let people build things online themselves and get immediate feedback. We can have them giving what's called user-contributed content, so they are creating a lesson or offering expertise or standardized learning, and then we build in badging, social badging, so they hear from their peer community about whether they've done it well or not. They get that kind of dynamic feedback, and I think this is going to continue to get better and better. And it will never be as great as the experience. If you ask yourself, what do you remember from your learning experience, it's never going to be something that you engaged with digitally. And that won't be true for our kids and our grandkids either. It's going to be the things they did with other people and human beings. Yep.
And this is what I guess Bill Drayton is so much talking about, the connection, the cognitive empathy, the team building, and the leadership, which is what I guess you are asking Spilling about. If that's how, is that the most important? Are they? And what you're saying also, it's the creativity that you're looking for, not necessarily the degrees they have, but of course you have to have a basic skill set.
Yeah, I think, and it's connected in the sense that most of those who need education the most are not able to access it. And that is one thing. How do we actually provide that in that sense, internet to the people, and then really start to make fun and so that people can start investigating. I think an example is that we did this kind of competition. How fast can you use a mobile phone to get information on the internet in Bangladesh? And in that sense, it was a cooperation with Wikipedia. And that creates thousands of young people in engagement to use these kind of tools to really get knowledge through the Wikipedia site. And of course, that is enormously a good example of how you can take that into the more educational, professional world. And those are the people who really needs it, and they will just speed up tremendously fast. So, but it's connected. You have to provide, let's say, cheap handsets or tabs, and it has to be very cheap because they don't have money. And then you start rolling when you look at it as a whole.
Rebecca, you are focusing much on ethics also, as well as technology. How do you manage to combine the two?
You know, I think we don't talk enough about ethics and what's happening in the digital space. We get together and we have conferences and we talk about all the remarkable things that digital learning will allow us and allow you learners to do. And I won't rattle off those, but what we don't spend enough time, I think, thinking about and talking about and learning about is anything that has tremendous power can be used for good or for evil, right? And in the United States, we're starting to have a real problem with what's called cyberbullying, where the same features of social internet-enabled learning, the immediacy, the ability of somebody to come out of nowhere and make a very public statement, it can be used by young people to humiliate and harm one another. And we're doing some research now with Facebook to try and understand what are the key points of leverage to help those young people understand and internalize the responsibilities they have in the digital space, and what are our shared responsibilities. When we're doing things in terms of corporate social responsibility, how do we weigh the imperative to do good in the world and also to do well? And to have some kind of ROI for our sponsors. I think these are questions that we need to understand better and to be talking about more. I hope this conference will be part of that conversation.
Steve, you had.
This is really relevant. Where, you know, we kind of find ourselves talking on both sides of what I think of as a content capability divide. And so, you know, one of the great gifts of online learning is that, boy, content we can do, and you know, we can talk about the different ways. I haven't been on Khan Academy longer than you haven't been on Khan Academy. I was once, you know. But what I think about is lost afternoons to Wikipedia. Okay, you're suddenly, wow, it's dark outside. I really got to take a shower, you know. You know, this day's gotten away from me. Yeah, we like to explore content, but you're really beginning to address capability, the capability of interacting with others in a respectful manner that require, I believe those things require a certain kinds of interactive experience that can't be taught. There is no 3-ring notebook with the 2 free DVDs on how to be a moral person. There's a lot of recommendations on how to be a moral person. We could learn about morality, but at the end of the day, I'm probably going to treat my colleague here at the end of the room better, end of the row better, if we have a shared social experience together. And I don't think in any way the online learning is going to eradicate social experiences, but I think there are certain kinds of social experiences that can lay the foundations for morality within the online space. And just because they happen to be in the same class in junior high school and math class or whatever, it doesn't mean they're going to necessarily have that kind of social experience that would lead to morality online.
Two thoughts on this. I mean, one is having the in-person interaction, in-person social interaction, to then lay the groundwork for online interaction is exactly what led Portman College, one of the ones that I mentioned in the talk, to sort of mix and match essentially an online delivery mechanism with kind of certain in-person interactions. And so the way they start is the very first thing they do is they bring everybody together, and you've got 15 students along with a mentor in the same place to meet each other for a week that's very intensive. And then after that, a lot of the interaction happens online. But it's essentially, I mean, I think they tried it without that, and what they found is just first that most people didn't participate, and then secondly, even when they did, there wasn't this kind of the moral boundaries that we all put in place when we know each other as people. So that's I think that there is something really about, you know, how do we create those social interactions in person first to then lead to this online. The other thing that this made me think of though is there are some interesting ways that different companies are looking at combating online bullying. And one example that comes to my mind is not in education, but is online gaming. So Riot Games is a company that is behind some of the more popular online games. And they found that people were quitting the game and therefore, you know, not paying them any more money because the bullying was so bad. And so what they started doing is then trying to build in ways to improve the moral fiber of their player base, you know, which is tough because of the anonymity involved and everything else, and the frustrations when people lose and whatever else. But so then they give people messages. So like every game before you start, there's a message that pops up that says, "Did you know that people that cooperate with their teammates win more? Did you know that people that curse out their teammates lose more?" And there's I think this is clearly a space where people haven't really cracked it, but I think there's some interesting things going on right now as this becomes, you know, online socialization becomes a much bigger part of our overall social lives.
Yeah, once you move the lecture out of the classroom, which isn't really social, you have 25 students listening to one expert, you can have a lot more interaction, and learning is a plenty more social experience than what is possible without technology, in my mind.
I think, to be a little bit positive in the sense, I think every social network or every, let's say, virtual institution have to be sure that it will become a good experience for those who are using it. If it continuously is becoming bullying, or people will leave that kind of society, I hope. We don't know, but I hope. And that's why I think most of those who have these kind of social networks today, if it's a game or if it's a place to be, they are starting to monitor quite a lot and try to get rid of those who really is making a bad experience for the users.
I think that's really essential. I've had the privilege of managing a listserv for my field, for pediatric neuropsychology, for about 15 years. We have over 2,000 members from all over the world, and one thing that's been really instructive for me is the importance of having a really clear set of guidelines and then really enforcing them. Because I think any online forum takes on the characteristics of its most antagonistic contributors. And there's like this emotion magnification factor when it comes through email. And so you can have, you know, 1,500 well-behaved people, and 3 people can blow that up, and people will start leaving in droves. So it's interesting to hear about online gaming sites, or, you know, look, man, this is a commons here. And because of the anonymity, people will do graffiti or worse in that space. How do you manage it at a con?
Yeah, I'm also a moderator, so I work with this quite a lot. And what I've learned from that is that most people are very kind. So if we spot something that could be viewed upon as negative, it's very, very quickly removed by people who spot that and flag it. So we just make sure that nothing is removed involuntarily, or something that was supposed to be there isn't removed. So I think the majority of kids are looking after for each other, are looking after for one another, and protecting each other. So I think it's working out very well in Khan Academy. But you have to be, of course, there are some challenges, and you have to protect the children from potential dangers that could be lurking out there. So there are definitely ethical issues.
Do you think there's a technology way that you can sort of give credit where credit is due and discourage inappropriate behavior? You know, is there a way to like upvote helpful contributions and downvote the jerks?
Yeah, you earn badges by being helpful, so gaining a lot of positive votes will gain you respect. And you can showcase these for your class and whoever you interact with on the site. So definitely is something that Khan Academy is utilizing.
Okay, thank you. I think we are reaching the end of the session. I think we see very great potential in the technology possibilities, and we see Khan Academy as a very good example, and you can use this also for scaling up the training, and which creates huge business opportunities and responsibilities for companies like Telenor, and I'm sure also McKinsey can get skilled people for the consulting work. The interesting thing in all this, and if anybody should believe that I have a very focused mind when it comes to Montessori, I don't know why they should, but I have to say that it's interesting that 100 years ago, a person without having the neuroscience knowledge that you have observed children and saw how are they learning. And what she did is what the brain surgery is, brain knowledge now prove as the way to do things. Yeah. But then technology can expand on this, and technology is creating potential material for the children to learn more, and for us to learn more, because it is an everlasting process that we can still go on. And for us it's even easier now, because we don't have to go back to classes, we can go into our computer. So thank you very much, but I think it's always important that we maintain the thinking of ethics and empathy in all this learning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.